Good afternoon on this July 4th weekend. Hope you're having a great weekend. I just wanted to share a little Dvar Torah with you. Yesterday was the Rebbe's yahrzeit, the 28th year since the passing of the Rebbe that we commemorated. And as you know, I was supposed to be in New York with tens of thousands of others at the Rebbe's gravesite, but Hashem had a different plan, and I got stuck on the plane for 4 hours and ended up with a beautiful Shabbos in Boston celebrating in our shul with our community and with all our staff. We were about 20 people for all the meals, and it was a very spiritual and uplifting Shabbos. But I wanted to share a little Dvar Torah with you that I was thinking about over Shabbos, and then tell you a little bit about my trip. So the truth is that very often the parasha of Korach falls out on the Shabbos that we commemorate the Rebbe's yahrzeit. And it's interesting because in the parasha of Korach we get a little insight to what true leadership is, as in Moses, the greatest Jewish leader, and Korach, who tries to rebel and become the leader. And at a time when we commemorate the Rebbe's yahrzeit, who was the greatest leader of our generation and revitalized Judaism, we glean ideas from Moshe and what true leadership is, and we find these attributes in the Rebbe. And it's interesting because at the beginning of last week's Torah portion, Korach comes and he has a bitter cry to Moshe. He looks at Moshe and Aaron and he says, I don't understand. We're all holy. We're all God's people. Why do we have this hierarchy? Why is Moses the leader and Aaron is the high priest? Aren't we all holy? Didn't God say clearly, you shall be for me a nation of kings and leaders, a light upon the nation? So why are you having this hierarchy? And the truth is that at first, it makes sense what Korach's saying. Korach was looking to usurp this idea that there's power and there's leaders that control and have the ultimate power. He said, well, aren't we all holy? And in fact, Korach had proof from Moses. Just last portion we read in the Torah portion, how there were two young men who were in the tent and they were prophesying, and Joshua came running out to Moshe and says, Moshe, Eldad and Medad are prophesying. We got to lock them up. We got to incarcerate them. And what does Moshe say? Moshe says those famous words. He says, Hamakana Tamli, are you jealous for me? I wish that God should make everyone prophets and give his divine wisdom and prophecy on all the Jewish people. So I don't understand. Wasn't Korach right? Wasn't he trying to get rid of power and hierarchy? He was right. And the answer is a very powerful one. This teaches us. You see, the difference between Korach and Eldad or Medad were one big difference. Eldad or Medad were giving prophecy. Korach was seeking power. Like many leaders in socialism and communism would say, oh, we're for the people. We want equality. But really what they want is power. Korach didn't want there should be no leaders. He wanted to be the leader. He wanted the power over the people. He didn't want Aaron to have it. But what's prophecy? What did Moses tell Joshua when he was worried about Eldad and Medad giving prophecy? He says, I wish that everyone should have God's prophecy. Prophecy is different. If you read in the scriptures and in the prophets and in the Bible, you understand that a prophet, most of the time when they got the prophecy, they were prostrated. They laid flat. They were humble. They had an outer body experience. Some of them even in their sleep. It was the time that they had prophecy from God was when they got rid of their ego and any self they had, and they became a conduit to the Almighty. That's what prophecy is. Prophecy is less of self and more of God. More prophecy, more spirituality, more of God coming through you. You see, Moshe said what Moshe was talking about, what God said when you're going to be a nation of kings. He meant prophets. He meant that we will be humble and recognize that we're here to serve the people. That God shines through us, not a power grab. What Korach wanted was a power grab. What Moshe was speaking about was a prophecy. And that's a tremendous message we learn from Moshe's prophecy, from Moshe's leadership. Because even after the whole rebellion, the rabbis tell us that night, after Korach got Dasan and Abiram and 250 leaders, and they rebelled against Moses, and they said the worst things, Moses went the whole night. Instead of waiting for the morning when there was going to be the proof and God was going to punish them, he went the whole night from tent to tent, and he tried to convince and persuade maybe even one person. Moshe said, maybe I'll capture one heart. Maybe I'll convince one mind. Maybe I'll win over one soul to God, to spirituality, to truth. Not to recognize, not to listen to the lies of Korach. Moshe could have given up. God said, go away from them. God said, separate from them and I will punish them. But Moshe said, I want to give it one more chance. I want to spend the evening, the night, the whole night trying to convince one more human being that I could be a conduit for God of a prophecy to them. And then later it says in the Torah portion that him and the 250 leaders and the 70 great leaders of the Jews went up to Dasan and Abiram, the greatest rabble rousers. Moshe couldn't even speak to them already. God said they were going to be punished. But he thought maybe just by him coming, Moses, who got the Torah with all the spirituality and all the 70 leaders, maybe he would inspire them to change their ways. Moshe never gave up. Moshe wasn't seeking power. Moshe was a prophet. It was all about God. It was all about humility. And that's the truth, is what the Rebbe was. Through all the years of the Rebbe's leadership, the Rebbe always sought to comfort, to uplift, to guide, not to have power, but to have influence, to be a prophet, someone who gives the word of Hashem. You know, in 1990 or in 1989, the Rebbe was nearly 90 years old, and every Sunday the Rebbe gave out dollars. For 5, 6, 7 hours. He wouldn't take a bathroom break. He wouldn't go up for a nap. He wouldn't sit. He would stand and look at every person and listen to their struggles and give them $1 and give them a blessing and wish them well. Every single man, woman, children, Jews, Gentiles. And there was a man from Florida who was sick. He was terminally ill with cancer and suffering tremendously. And unfortunately, he succumbed to his sickness a little while after. But he came to dollars. And this was at the end of the day. Here's the greatest Jewish leader of the generation, standing and listening to every single person, surrounded by his secretaries and his advisors. And this man comes, and he looks the Rebbe in the eyes, and he wags his finger at the Rebbe as he would to a little child. Imagine. And he looks at the Rebbe and he says, I'm disappointed in you. Everyone's shocked. The secretaries, the people are around it, the people who are waiting behind him. How could someone say this to the greatest leader? What would you answer in that moment? And the Rebbe looked back at this person and he said, in the most gentle way, you're not the only one. You're in good company. I'm also disappointed in myself. The Rebbe, instead of being angry, instead of looking, the Rebbe felt his pain and wanted him to know that he wasn't alone. Leadership means uplifting. Leadership means humility. I might have once told you the story, one of my favorite stories, about the man who led our yeshiva. He was in charge of the superintendent, so to speak, of all the managerial things and all the fundraising for the yeshiva. And he once had an urgent request from the Rebbe. Someone was sick and he wanted a blessing, but the Rebbe had gone home for the night and he couldn't disturb the Rebbe. The Rebbe would go home at 2 a.m. sometimes, and he only had a few hours at home. So what someone recommended to him, he does, is he takes the paper, he writes the note, and at the Rebbe's office, he'll put it between the door and the doorpost. He'll stick it in, and when the Rebbe comes in the morning, the Rebbe will see it, and he'll take it, I'll get it right away. The Rebbe came very early, and he does that. But the next day, he finds out that when the Rebbe came, the Rebbe opened the door without recognizing, and the paper fell down to the floor. And he realized that he had made the Rebbe bend down, and he was devastated. And he wrote a whole letter to the Rebbe asking for forgiveness, that he made the Rebbe, the great leader who spent so much time worrying about everyone, bend down to pick up his paper. And the Rebbe wrote back to him 3 words in Hebrew, or 4 words. Hare calling Yoni lahagbia. Isn't my whole job to lift up? The Rebbe saw himself, as he learned from Moshe Rabbeinu, not about power, but about prophecy. To be there, to be humble, to be able to lift up someone else, their spirits, and make them the person they should be. After I spent Shabbos here, which I didn't intend, but was a beautiful Shabbos, I decided the last minute at 10 p.m., Gruni and I got into the car, and we drove 3 hours, door to door, and we went to the Rebbe's gravesite. And we came at 1:15 a.m., we thought it would be quiet. I went to the mikveh, I immersed. I came out, and there was hundreds, thousands of people, lines waiting to get in. And what touched me the most was there was Charedim, there were people with fur hats and long payas. There were Chabadniks, there were secular Jews, there were Sephardim, there were Ashkenazim, there were Gentiles. Everyone's streaming to have a word of comfort, to pray, to be strengthened in their faith to Hashem. And we learned from the Rebbe's leadership. We learned from Moshe Rabbeinu and not from Korach. God bless us all, and have a happy 4th tomorrow.